Just a few years ago, I'd have told you that annual sports games aren't my thing. My curiosity leads me to pick up 2K or NHL on sale every few years, but I'll typically binge for a couple dozen hours and move on, the craving satisfied. I've never felt enough of a connection to any sport to become an annual customer, not even to a motorsport, in spite of my lifelong love of cars. Racing broadcasts are often locked behind absurd paywalls, sometimes across multiple different networks or services, and that's assuming you're even able to figure out when events are on before they happen. So while I had interest in watching races, I found catching these things live to be far more cumbersome than it was worth. But that changed in 2018, when a best of team radio video thrust me headfirst into the world of Formula 1. F1 has been described as reality television at 200 miles per hour, and it's a description I've adopted when introducing friends to the sport. The bleeding edge of automotive engineering meets the best and brightest racing talent on Earth, put on display for millions the world over. But driving is only part of the show. Every person's personality is put in the spotlight, heightening drama and providing much easier avenues for audience connection to the cars on screen. When Formula E, IMSA, and even NASCAR feel out of reach, F1 practically beckons new fans. Highlights, top 10s, explanation videos, and excellent social media mean it's easy to dive in without spending a dime, no matter when the race takes place. And for those willing to spend just a few dollars a month, every single event is streamed live in the same place. And not just the main event, but feeder and supporting series too. Needless to say, I was hooked. Finally, racing was something I could watch rather than occasionally glimpse. And what a gateway drug this sport is. Being who I am, it wasn't long before I picked up the then latest F1 game from Codemasters, and over the years, this infatuation grew until it became a staple of my life, a weekly routine that I've seldom skipped. The Shambles Championship. What began as friendly races between friends has grown to become a fully fledged competition. Stewards investigations, a feeder series, and endless shenanigans.
Whoa! Hudson!
That's a great penalty.
Over 3 seasons, I've known triumph and humiliation. I've pushed myself as a driver, and been humbled by my peers doing the same. And above all else, I've built friendships that I can't imagine my life without. Full-length races with friends demand time, patience, and effort. But they are the most rewarding way to experience Formula 1. So for the 3rd year in a row, I've picked up the newest F1 game on release day, and so far, F1 22 is providing exactly what I expected. New cars, new tracks, but ultimately the same game I've been playing for years, and for the most part, that's a good thing. If you remember a single line from this review, let it be that I think F1 22 is yet another worthwhile entry in this franchise. It's met my expectations, and I will be spending hundreds of hours with it in the year to come. There is an elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, and I'll get to that later, but this is the first time I've properly discussed Formula 1 on the channel, so I'm gonna pack away the cynicism for the first half of this video. If you came to see me issue a beatdown over F1 doing what every annual sports game does, this isn't the review for you. But if you came to see me be a fucking nerd about the coolest race cars on the planet, then stick around. As someone who spends 90% of her time in private multiplayer lobbies, the appeal of the latest game is always in driving the current season's cars and tracks. Because in the real world, F1 cars are always changing, and this year's change is the biggest since 2014. After 8 seasons of iteration on the V6 hybrid platform, Formula 1 has welcomed a new generation of car. They're still V6 hybrids, but, well, look at them. I'm no engineer, so I can't really explain how it all works, but all the changes you're seeing have been made in the name of promoting closer racing. We've already seen these forces at work in the real world, and F1 22's renditions don't disappoint. I've only scratched the surface of what will be a long tenure with this game, but off the bat, these cars feel different, better than those in 2021's game, which, by comparison, felt twitchy and volatile when they should have been planted and stable. 2021's handling was more challenging than F1 2020's, but not always in ways that made sense. Catalunya, in particular, sticks out as a track that never felt right, with some corners feeling like there's a cartoon oil slick on the racing line. As a whole, F1 22's cars feel far smoother and more stable than what came before. I'm still acclimating to the changed physics, so my pace needs some work, but I already feel far more connected to these cars than I ever have in the past. It always takes a while for you to find your limits in a racing game, and longer still for complaints about the driving model to arise from hours of practice, but where last year's game was immediately more challenging than the one that came before, I feel like I'm lacking in pace, not the ability to take the car around the track safely, and that's an important distinction. I was afraid to push the car in 2021 because it felt like I was at constant risk of spinning. And yes, that's partially on me and my skills as a driver, but friends I consider far better than me have echoed this sentiment. By comparison, 22's cars feel, for lack of a better word, fair. I obviously can't speak to realism, only 4 or 5 people in the world have driven each of these things, but from real-world drivers' descriptions and criticism of previous games, I can't help but feel that this is a step in the right direction. Multiplayer is why I play these games, but I can't discount the sheer quality and quantity of content on offer in F122's single-player modes. There's no cinematic story like last year's game, but in truth, I'm not really sad to see it go. I've been meaning to talk about Codemaster's recent racing game story modes, and that might still happen, but the quick and dirty summary is that I don't think Breaking Point was very good at all. It was a series of vignettes with static outcomes, suffering from many of the same problems as every other motorsports-themed story mode that I've ever played. Forcing a predetermined outcome for every step of the narrative underutilizes the sheer unpredictability of F1 as a sport. Breaking Point drew inspiration from real-world events, but without the feeling that anything can happen, it doesn't really work. The strength of Formula 1 as a sport and as a video game sandbox are in its open-ended nature. Career and My Team are completely dynamic. There may not be bespoke storylines, character arcs, or cutscenes, but you don't need those things to tell a story when the gameplay does it for you. These modes allow you to simulate the world's most compelling spectator sport as if you were the one in charge and behind the wheel with near-complete freedom. And yes, I did say simulate. Codemaster's F1 games are not the most unforgiving sims on the planet, but if they were, they'd be near impossible for the average player to control. Just as Formula 1 itself is accessible as a spectator sport, the game needs to be something that any fan can pick up and play, and Codemasters have absolutely nailed this. F122 is the type of game that I wish other motorsports would get. To name just a few, IndyCar, IMSA, WEC, and Formula E could all benefit from this approach to video game adaptation. Those deadly serious about physics and competition can turn to more serious simulators, but I suspect that fans like me, who land somewhere around the 3/4 mark on the casual to enthusiast spectrum, would enjoy a more polished package that values being a game as much as it values authenticity. But at the same time, F122 is still undeniably a simulator. What it lacks in physics, it makes up for through the most in-depth representation of the sport's format, rules, dynamics, and spectacle. No other game offers F1's qualifying format, the realistic differences between cars, unique traits and skills between different drivers, or presentations so realistic that, if you squint, it could be mistaken for the real thing. Spectator cameras and on-screen motion graphics are painstakingly modeled after the real sports broadcasts, and fan-favorite commentators and personalities are represented in kind. It helps that F122 is a really good-looking game. It doesn't really push the envelope graphically, but in motion, it's convincing. And regardless, resolution and frame rate are far more important to this particular experience than pretty visuals. Driving a Formula 1 car demands reflexes on the edge of human capability. And while I'm obviously not on that edge myself, sim racing is like any other esport where more frames are never a bad thing. I haven't been able to afford a PC upgrade since about 2018, so still being able to run F122 at decent settings has been refreshing, especially after other major releases have brought my aging 10 series card to its knees. And while I can't speak to the last gen console experience, the PS5 version of the game looks even better than my PC can manage. And thanks to today's sponsor, Narvitech, I've actually been able to experience proper 4K gaming for the first time ever. So let's go ahead and take a minute to thank them. You might recall that Narvitech sent me their NS120 capture wand a few months ago, and that it rapidly became my new primary capture solution for my living room. So when Narvitech reached out and offered to send me their newest device, the NJ300, I practically jumped at the chance to see what the latest card could do. Everything you'll be seeing in this portion of the video was captured through the NJ300 with all the F1 footage captured on PlayStation 5. See, the NS120 had my living room covered, but in my office, I was still stuck with the same old device I've been using since 2019, and I'll be real, that old card was not cutting it anymore. Launching PS2 games to my PS3 while recording or streaming would literally hard crash my computer. But with the Narvitech NJ300, boom, starts right up, no sweat. No proprietary software or drivers, no fiddly compatibility, it's just plug and play. So compatibility with older hardware, and not crashing my computer, were my favorite part of the upgrade, but the NJ300 has a lot to offer. As you'd expect from Narvitech, this device is perfect for just about anything you need game capture for. Twitch or YouTube streaming, capturing for YouTube videos, or just chilling with friends and playing games. This card lets you capture pretty much any HDMI source at 60 frames per second, with 4K pass-through meaning PS5 owners can enjoy games in their full fidelity while still capturing or streaming. And it does all of that at half the price of equivalent cards. Or if you use my special promo code, 10KCNJ, even less than half. And you support my channel with your purchase. We'll also be doing a giveaway soon, so keep an eye on my Twitter for the chance to win a free NJ300, and thanks again to Narvitech for sponsoring this video. Let's recap. F1 as a sport is perfectly suited to video game adaptation, and Codemasters have once again captured the magic. Like nearly every entry before it, the latest F1 game is the best one yet, and whether you're a hardcore fan or a curious newcomer, you do well to pick it up. But let's talk about that elephant. Codemasters F1 is a good game in its own right, more so than any other annual sports title. Yet I fear it's falling into the same trap as the rest. Granted, we're not in microtransaction hell just yet, but I can't help but feel that meaningful improvements aren't being made unless they look good on the back of the box. Licensed clothing and supercars have been shoehorned into the game, with seemingly little purpose beyond edging F1's existing customization towards a games-as-a-service business model. And it's really not hard to foresee how these features will be monetized in the future. The few changes that don't cause concern feel plain undercooked. For the first time in the series' history, female drivers can have hair. But you can't choose the hair. You're stuck with whatever your preset has, which in the case of the one I've always used, is the shittiest haircut in video game history. Look, you're going through the trouble of giving us Antisocial Social Club t-shirts and customizable couches. Is it too much to ask to pick my hair? On the gameplay front, there's this new interactive pit stop mechanic, which was a marketing bullet point despite not adding much to the experience at all. What's being sold as next level interactivity is literally a quick time event, and a less compelling one than what Sony had 15 years ago. The problem isn't just that it's a vapid timing minigame, it's not even well thought out. If you're double stacking and you miss your turn-in point, your stop is still slowed down, even though you sat behind your teammate for several seconds before pulling into the box. All of this is to say that F122's new features feel like they're chosen out of obligation to a marketing team's recommendation, with little regard to how meaningful those additions are to the overall experience. Meanwhile, actual gameplay issues have gone unfixed for years now. Lapped cars still can't overtake the safety car. Red flags still don't exist. I've experienced the same UI bugs in this game that I did back in 2017. And despite my primary enjoyment of these games coming from multiplayer, F1 becomes one of the most broken games on the market the second network connection comes into the picture. It might sound like I'm being hyperbolic, but if you'd driven the 3 seasons of full-length races in the previous 2 games, you would be right here with me. F1 has provided some of the most frustrating and downright puzzling moments I've ever experienced in gaming. Lag spikes and stupid penalties are nothing compared to the things we've seen over the last couple of years, to the point that if I didn't have footage of our most bizarre incidents, I don't think you'd believe me.
You're not gonna make it on the episode.
What the fuck's happening?
Whoa, what happened?
What the fuck is happening?
Wait, what happened? User's car did like a front flip on top of the safety car, and then flipped back while he got damage just.
What is going on?
He had damage just on his front wing.
Nice relaxing drive.
Exactly what we expect from Shambles.
Here's the thing, like, internally, I am terrified of that chicane that just got by, you know, the end of the first.
Guys, I think Jeff might be having a stroke.
Why?
He keeps saying 0.
So here's a great thing. Because Hudson was reacting to a ghost that I can't see from me, he just brake checked me.
What? Really?
Yeah.
You didn't see that die?
No.
Oh my god, I can't wait to see the memes.
Wait, did I hit you?
You shoved me upside down.
Oh,
What? I didn't do anything. What happened? I didn't. I swear I didn't. I swear. I swear to you I didn't. You're nowhere near me.
Breaking idea next.
Finished the Monaco
What
Grand
the
Prix, Hudson.
Let's go!
Good shit, Vic. Good shit.
Baby!
Yeah.
E6, I will definitely fucking take it.
Fucking thing.
Let's go! Jake victory, let's go!
He was letting me buy on. Oh
Are you okay?
no!
That was a big one.
Ray's out.
Right!
Yeah.
I think you get the picture. While Shambles is certainly more entertaining for all the buggy chaos that F1 provides, it's hard to see that when you're on the receiving end of it. With crossplay on the way, there's a chance that netcode will receive a more meaningful overhaul, but judging by how little has actually been fixed since last year's game, I'm not gonna hold my breath. Now, with all of that being said, I do want to give Codemasters the benefit of the doubt this year. Credit where it's due, Codemasters have handled this generational transition much more smoothly than the last, wherein New Cars resulted in one of the worst games of their modern output. The smooth transition to the new cars might have been helped by the Real Sports decision to push this new generation back a year, having been previously slated to begin in 2021, but I can also see how a curveball like that could make development harder for both games. And remember, this year's game didn't just bring new cars. There was also a brand new track to model, and multiple revisions to existing ones. The workload for this game was higher than most in recent memory, and it's come off the heels of 2 very difficult years. For game developers, sure, but also just for humans. As for the transition from independent studio to subsidiary, I think Cody's have come off about as well as we could have hoped. While I'm certainly no fan of F1 Life, I recognize it's a fact of life when you're published by a monolith like Electronic Arts. If Supreme t-shirts and road car collections are the price of avoiding bullshit like Ultimate Team, then let the drip flow. So, please, don't take my criticisms of things not getting fixed as judgment or condemnation of the developers. Like, I get it, dude. Sometimes you just gotta meet a deadline. With both the new cars and the framework for F1 Life implemented, I'm hoping that core gameplay can return to the forefront of development sooner rather than later. I trust that's what the folks at Codemasters want, and all I can do now is hope that those desires still matter. Before I wrap up the video, I have some good news and some not so good news, so please stick with me. Good news first. If the many clips throughout this video have you curious about the Shambles Championship, we'll be starting our 4th season in a couple months from this video's publication, driving into F1 22. But in the meantime, we're going to be doing a spin-off season called the Shambles Endurance Cup series. Using Automobilista 2, we'll be driving 8 multi-class races on American circuits. I'll be partaking in sex in the 911 Porsche GTE, fighting against my fellow GTEs while navigating traffic of slower P3s and faster DPIs. I'm really looking forward to driving something older than an F1 car with these guys, and knowing them, it's gonna be a shit show in the best possible way. You can catch the stream over on the Shambles Twitch account at 5 PM Eastern every Thursday beginning on August 11th. Link in the description. As for the not so good news, well, it's a little awkward, but I need your help. I feel somewhat uncomfortable laying this bare so publicly, but it's only fair that I give somewhat of an explanation. I asked for patience back in April as I moved house, and at the time I'd fully expected to remain where I was going for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, before I'd really even gotten settled, things transpired and I have to find somewhere else to live. I'm not at immediate risk of being homeless or anything, I've got time to find somewhere to go, but the sooner I'm out of my current situation, the better for everybody involved, and that includes you guys, as I'll be able to focus more on the channel. The problem here is I do not have moving or security deposit funds saved up, as this was a completely unexpected twist of fate. I'm making enough to support myself once I've moved, but actually moving is the hard part, as it's going to cost at least 2 months worth of living expense up front. I hate to directly ask for monetary help like this, but know that I wouldn't be doing it if the situation I'm in wasn't incredibly sucky. It's been going on for a few weeks now, and it's felt hopeless at times, but I've since found the stubbornness to not let this kill me. Believe me, I'm currently busting my ass with side gigs and my day job to put this very painful time behind me, but with y'all's help, I can hopefully do it faster. So here's what I've got planned. A challenge stream. Need for Speed Undercover for PS2. If you've seen my video on that game, you know what's up. Its spawn rate for police cars, roadblocks, and spike strips is completely bonkers. Like, 1 roadblock every 10 seconds. For every $1 donated, I will dodge 1 roadblock. I will attempt to do it in 1 pursuit, though that seems like tempting fate a bit, so I'm gonna set a ceiling on how many I have to do per pursuit before I'm allowed to escape and bank them, but I have to escape. If I get busted, they don't count. I'm gonna start the playthrough from scratch and wait until I get to a certain point in the campaign to start doing the pursuits. For as little as $1, you can personally make me play the most broken Need for Speed game on consoles for at least a little bit longer. I'm gonna set some stretch goals for this as well. One I had in mind was either a stream or a review of that awful Most Wanted DS port, but if you've got any ideas of your own, reply to the pinned comment and let me know. I'll also put the final date for the stream in that pinned comment once I've got it nailed down. Whether or not you're able or even want to help out, I hope you're able to enjoy the show, and in a broader sense, I truly hope that you enjoy what I do. My videos mean a lot to me, and when things get rough, they've always been the passion projects that I've latched onto. Knowing that there are 50,000 of you who are interested in hearing what I have to say never fails to humble and motivate me. Y'all have been a better community than I could ever hope for, and I'm extremely grateful for every kind word and late-night Discord conversation you've given me. You'll be hearing from me soon, and until then, take care of yourselves, please.